Welcome, everyone, to the Lead Generation World podcast. My name is Michael Faree. We've got a great show in store for you today. We've got Jason Cutter from Cutter Consulting. We're going to be talking about all things sales, and I think it's really interesting. He's got a great perspective on authentic persuasion, and so we'll be talking a lot about that. So I hope you enjoy it. Don't forget, we've got Lead Generation Week coming up May 25th through the 29th, and then after that, we're going to be opening up sales for Lead Generation World 2021 in Denver, and so we're really excited about that too. We've got so much in store for Denver 2021 and so many improvements based on all the feedback that you guys have provided. So we're really excited about that. But without any further ado, let's go ahead and bring Jason in and get started. All right. Welcome, everyone, to the Lead Generation World podcast. My name is Michael Faree. I've got Jason Cutter with us today. Jason, welcome to the show.
Thanks, Michael. I'm super excited to be on your show. Big fan of everything that you're doing out there with the Lead Generation World.
Yeah, thanks, man. I appreciate it. We got introduced through a mutual friend, Dan Redmond. Dan actually was on this show a number of months ago, and he was also participated in the Lead Generation World event in Denver. But it's a pleasure to meet you and hear a lot about what you're up to today with regards to writing your book and your consulting services and all this sort of stuff. But before we get into those sort of details, I kind of want to get an idea and give everybody a chance to know a little bit more about you. And so I was looking through your LinkedIn profile. You sort of got started early on in the mortgage industry, right?
Yep, that was my first official sales job in 2002.
So what exactly led you to the mortgage industry? Was it just a happenstance, or was there something specific there?
No, there was nothing specific. It was happenstance. I was just coming off of 2 years at Microsoft doing tech support, and we had just all been let go, the whole team in outside of Seattle, Washington, because all the jobs for tech support were now in China and India. In fact, we spent several months training all of our counterparts so that they could then take our jobs. Which it's funny now. Everyone just expects and understands offshore and outsourcing. You're going to call, you might get customer service in a different country. But that wasn't always the case. And that was literally why we lost our jobs in 2002. And then I didn't know what I wanted to do. I mean, we may talk about it or not, but my bachelor's degree is in marine biology. So none of it makes sense. And I didn't know what I wanted to do next in life. Yeah. And a family friend was like, hey, I got a guy I know that has a mortgage company, and he's looking to expand, and he's looking to hire somebody. And then he gave me a referral, and I interviewed, and then that was it.
Yeah. So, and that was what, 2005-ish, I guess.
2002.
So, 2002. So mortgage was sort of, the mortgage industry was going up and things were good, right? And at least up until 2006, things kind of went sideways.
And this was in Seattle, which, for at least a stretch of about 4 years or so, I think Seattle had a 18% appreciation rate in real estate. I think by the minute, it was just ridiculous. And this is pre-Amazon. This is kind of Starbucks corporate was there, but this is really, before a lot of stuff that you're familiar with in Seattle. But yeah, I mean, it was a two-sided thing where the mortgage business was so easy. We joked about it years later, where all you had to do was show up every day and sometimes answer your phone, and you would make six figures. Like, that was it. Like, you didn't even have to return phone calls because people were so excited to get mortgages. And so the challenge is that I didn't receive any training. I didn't know what I was doing. I had no sales background. And I fumbled my way through the first 6 months in a very painful way.
Yeah. I mean, at that point, you're just sort of taking orders, right?
That's it. I just literally don't know. I mean, my whole job was sit here, answer the phone, fill out the lead sheet, hand it to the higher up guy, and then listen to what he does and watch him in meetings. And then that's how I became a salesperson.
Yeah. Well, so how did that set you up for, what you did later? If, around let's see, I'm looking at your profile here, around 2011. No. 2006, you went to SEBA.
So 2006, I went to National Housing Solutions.
Oh, I'm sorry,
in 2010,
Housing,
went to SEBA. So what happened was I was in the mortgage business, and really I learned a lot of lessons the hard way, by failing, like, usually happens in life, and losing deals and messing things up. I was in the mortgage business for a few years, realized it was good and it was fun and people were making a lot of money, but I literally left it while it was still going strong, because it just didn't call to me. It didn't feel like something I was really excited about doing every day. So then I transitioned to helping people who are in foreclosure, helping them avoid losing their house to auction, helping them deal with the banks, helping them negotiate short sales, and all of that stuff. And so that kind of led into there. And then I went to go work for a company, and the owner of that company said, well, we need you to be in charge of sales, because I was trying to hide over on the operations side. And he's like, nope, you need to be in charge of sales and run the sales team and do all of that. And so then I had my first foray of being a manager in a sales team.
So, early on, you were like, obviously going to school for marine biology. Did you ever think of yourself as like, when did it sort of click with regards to sales for you?
It was truly somewhere around 2008. 2008, 2009, I would say it really actually clicked. Because marine biology degree, I worked in restaurants, during and right after college, where waiting tables. I didn't really want to work with the public, so I put it off as long as I could. And then I ended up in a restaurant role, and then I ended up at Microsoft, and then I ended up in sales, and I kind of fought it for a long time. And it wasn't until about 2008, 2009 when I said, wow, I am really good at this persuading thing and selling thing. And what was the key was when I started in the mortgage business, it was all face to face. If someone calls, get in a meeting as quickly as possible, get them in the office, meet them face to face, build rapport, build trust, and sell them that way. Don't sell anything over the phone. It never works. And then in 2006, went to work for that other company where it was 100% phone sales. And so I had to learn and shift and make a dramatic change. And then after a few years of that, saw what was truly possible, like what you could accomplish over the phone selling. And then that's when I realized, wait, like A, this works really well. And B, I am really good at this. Like besides the fact that on paper, I shouldn't be.
So what does it make, what are those characteristics that you say, you think that, that makes you really, really good at sales? I mean, what are those things that you kind of clicked and go, okay, these are the things I should be focusing on when I'm talking with somebody or whatever it may be that can really get them into a position where they can make a decision?
I truly want to help people from a problem solving transformation, get them into a better place and help them accomplish their goals, or overcome their pain in whatever I'm selling. It could be, SaaS platform to help with marketing, integration. Doesn't matter. It could be helping get someone get out of debt. Like obviously there's we're saving the world, or I'm helping someone save their home, or that side. It's easy to say, okay, well, I'm making a huge impact. It's in anything. And so I take the approach where I just want to solve that problem. I want to help that person get to a better place. I've always been a big fan of puzzles and problem solving, even as a kid. And then I just apply that to conversations. And so I am just very curious and want to ask lots of questions and want to understand someone at the deep level so that I can then solve it, because then it's easy, right? So once you understand it, then you can just apply a solution. And then the other part, because I've been through so much life and so many ups and downs and different things that have happened, I'm also crazy empathetic to somebody who might be challenged with something, struggling. Again, it could be that marketing manager who works at a company and they're struggling. I know what that's like to be worried about your job. And if you have good leads or sales converting your leads, like I am empathetic on a wide range of things, which really helps in my conversations.
One of the things that, people always talk about good salespeople is that they can sell, ice to an Eskimo, right? Or whatever it is, they can sell something to the person that doesn't even really need it. Now, I don't know. I'm just kind of curious on your thoughts on that, because that's sort of the opposite to some extent of the empathy approach, right? Or the you know, because at that point it's hard to empathize with an Eskimo that doesn't need ice, right?
Right.
That, so what is your sort of overall that old theory, that old thought of a sales guy can sell you anything? I mean,
Yeah.
what do you think? What is your general thought about that?
Well, I think on one side, if we just look at that skill set, I think that's amazing, and I love seeing it in action in those conversations.
Yeah.
I think it's kind of like watching a top level athlete perform in their sport at such an amazing level. You just can't help but be in awe when you see that happen.
Yeah.
And it's tough because most people aren't ever going to perform that way, right? So watching Tiger Woods in his heyday, or watching, Michael Jordan, it's like, that's awesome. I can't turn away from this. And I will never be like that. So
Yeah.
on one side, it's amazing. On this side, it's really hard to relate. In sales, I think that's amazing. I love watching people who can do that and listen to conversations, and it's just amazing. My approach is also, though, is taking those great skills and however they've come about, and focusing more on persuasion instead of manipulation. So manipulation is, I'm going to sell you something, or I'm going to get you to do something for my benefit, and I don't care what happens to you, right? Like, it's a negative definition if you really dive into it. Persuasion could go either way, but I use positive persuasion, which is, I want to sell you this because you need it. You're going to win. I'm going to win, and then we're both going to be happy. Because of that, and because of an abundance mindset, in reality, I would never sell ice to Eskimos because they don't need it. I would rather solve a different problem for them. But that's getting into the nitty gritty of it.
No, well, that's
It's
it.
the
But
intent, right?
yeah, but that no, that's the sort of the point of my question though. Sometimes when I was thinking about what you were saying, it's about having a product that you believe in, right?
Right.
And that actually solves a problem. Unfortunately, not everybody's in a position to be at a organization or something that may have a product that truly serves solves a problem. It's more of an add-on, right? It's more of a icing on the cake type of thing where I don't really need it, but it would be kind of cool if I could have it, that sort of thing.
Yep. Well, and so then I think there's two parts to that are always important, and I work with teams and salespeople on, and just myself as well, which is, okay, is this actually helping them accomplish a goal? Maybe they don't really realize it, or they don't fully believe it, or they don't think it can actually happen. Like you're saying, this add-on, right? Like,
Yeah.
I don't need this, but if I had it, it would be great. Can it actually help them get to a better place? Does it solve anything that maybe it could help to? And I'm not talking, again, this is, talking about services a lot and solving problems. You could also be selling TVs, where it's like, somebody wants a TV, or they think they need a new TV. How do I do it in the right way possible? How do I get them what they want? Even if it's like getting something bigger and better, they're still going to be happy with. At the end of the day, are they happy with what they bought? Is the buyer's remorse going to be, on the lower end of the scale because they feel like everything went well? And then, does it make sense? So, and then the other part to your question or your comment is, I would always challenge everybody. I mean, if you're selling things and it's a nice to have, it's kind of an add-on, is it really valuable? Does the market really need it? And that's going to always play into how difficult it is to sell, and what that whole sales process feels like.
Yeah. One sort of anecdotal thing. I was just on a call last week, and we're putting on this sort of virtual conference next week called Lead Generation Week, and we've got some really great sessions. But one of the sessions is with 3 or 4 CMOs, and the moderator is actually is a brand, a guy that usually is getting the phone calls from these guys, and the topic is sort of around how to sort of navigate sales through some of these the times that we're in now, and using sort of empathy in the whole in the whole process. But they kind of put him on the spot and go, okay, well, how do we sell to you? And
Yeah.
he said a couple things, and I don't want to give it away, but because they're probably going to talk about this in the session. But one of the things was really just having patience and empathy, and understanding that not and having persistent follow up, but
Mhm.
not getting frustrated or being impatient, and there's a balance, I think, there that, especially with a sales process that may be, 6 months, you just to continually follow up, but not get impatient, and understand that not all follow-ups are going to happen. Doesn't mean he's not interested and all that sort of stuff. But
Yeah.
it was sort of interesting, and about the process. We could probably get into a little bit of that, but I do want to sort of just touch base on what you also said, which with persuasion. That's really interesting to me, especially the way you phrase it with authentic persuasion. We've had behavioral science guys and at our conference, and talk about the art of persuasion to some extent. But I really kind of want to hear sort of your twist on the authentic persuasion sort of outlook.
Yeah, so based on my experience with both myself, right, and talking about this, awkward only child, late bloomer, marine biologist me, like growing up, right? So and the reason I point that out, I always try to remind people that, because a lot of times we see salespeople, and let's say like a Gary V type, if anyone's familiar, I mean, he was ripping people's flowers out of their yards and selling it back to them door to door as a kid, right? Then there's me, right? Like I'm on the opposite end growing up as a child, yet I'm here because of just, what I've embraced with myself. And then I see that with a lot of reps. And the term I use, you brought it up earlier, is order taker. There's a lot of people who are taking orders and not closing sales. And for me, the formula and the process is that authentic persuasion, which is important because persuasion by itself, like you said, I mean, the behavioral scientists and all these people that teach you persuasion, you can use persuasion, but what are you going to get? And are you going to get good sales? And are you going to feel good about the process? Is it going to be natural, right? Like you can use persuasion to have a win-win, but is it going to be really ultimately effective? Also, there's a lot of people who focus on authenticity and they want to be true to who they are, and they want to do the right thing, and they want to use empathy, and they want to care, and they know what their strengths are. The challenge is you put them in a sales role and they're not taking action and they're not doing the persuasion piece. Then they're a really nice customer service based order taker who has lots of great conversations, not enough closed deals. And then eventually they're going to get fired or have to move on to something else. So it's really that combination of the two that I found really successful.
So I mean, when sometimes when people hear the word persuasion, they sort of hear the, being tricked into something that they didn't
See,
really
and that would
want.
be the manipulation side, right? Like
So
if we
right,
look
yeah,
at the definitions, that's me tricking you into doing something for me, for my benefit, and
yes.
making you think it's something good for you.
Yes, exactly. It sort of sort of blurs the lines a little bit. People think manipulation sometimes when they hear
Mhm.
persuasion, but really, so how does this may be a tough one, but I'm kind of curious how sort of implementation of persuasion in a sales process sort of occurs. And I know there's probably very some minutia in each example that maybe we can gloss over, but if what do you guys work with more? Are you working with mortgage companies? Is that some of the
You know what? Since I've gone into consulting, I haven't yet.
good?
I've
You've
wanted
like
to.
you've left. You're like, I'm out of
I,
here.
you know, so once I went into the world of helping people in foreclosure and then ending up inside sales and phone
Yeah.
sales, my focus has just been mostly inside sales, call center type sales rooms, not giant
Okay.
ones, but that
Yeah.
offshore, near shore. But no, I haven't gone back into that. I've had more B2B clients, more
Yeah.
software as a service,
I was
but I'd
trying to
love
think
to. I
of
mean,
a
I really want
yeah.
to.
Yeah, I was
Yeah,
trying to
all
think
of
of
it.
a example, maybe you can I was going to say mortgage, but maybe there's a better
Yeah.
example of how sort of the persuasion sort of gets implemented into something. Is there something from a maybe anecdotal or more maybe something more specific that you can sort of go, okay, this is how this sort of gets implemented into a sales process, or is that too
So
hard
I
to answer?
no, so the punchline, what I would say is, and I guess there's two different sides depending on how far we want to go into this. But
Yeah.
one of the things is to look at how a doctor operates in a visit with a patient, not operates like on the
Yeah.
operating table, but how they function in their conversations with somebody who's in their office and potentially has a problem. That is persuasion when it's done appropriately. And people don't think it's like, well, it's a doctor. They don't use persuasion. They just do their process. And that's my point. When it's done right, it doesn't feel like persuasion. It doesn't feel like, hey, if I can show you how to save $500 a month, would this be something you'd be interested in buying today? Right? Like it's not those kind of lines, which could work and do work, but it's a totally different feeling. So if we look at how a doctor's appointment goes, you go in, nurse maybe checks you out, tests you, pokes, prods, gets measurements. Doctor comes in, does the same thing. If it's a 10-minute or 15-minute doctor's appointment, the first 90% of that will be questions. It will be discovery. It will be tests. It will be, having you stand on one foot, or, listen here, or tapping on this, whatever that might be. Then at the end of their process, right? Again, questions, discovery, with some rapport and empathy. Then what comes is the diagnosis. And they say, okay, based on this, here's what you have going on. And then they say, here's your prescription, which is, okay, so here's what we're going to do about it. Do you have any questions? Is there any other information you'd like to know about that? No? Okay, sounds good. Now I need you to take this to the front desk, and then they're going to set you up with this, and it's done, right? So they use a very assumptive close based on the information they got because they know what the solution is for you. That's what a professional does, right? A professional salesperson builds rapport, asks their questions, has empathy, builds some trust, figures out what the diagnosis is, the prescription, and then uses the assumptive close to take that person with them on the journey across the finish line.
It makes complete sense. And it's like we try to probably overcomplicate things, right?
Yeah,
A lot of times, but it's really
100%.
about, figuring out what the needs are and then answering them, right? And fulfilling those needs.
And then also seeing your role, if you're a sales professional, whatever your title is, right? There's all kinds of crazy titles out there now for salespeople to hide the fact that they're salespeople because
Yeah.
it has such a bad connotation in the world because of the manipulators, we were talking about earlier. And so what happens is if you're a sales professional, that's what you should be doing. People are coming to you for help. If they didn't need your help in making a decision, they would just order it online, right?
Yeah.
Like they would order it online or they would call customer service or order it out of a catalog, but they're talking to you or you're talking to them because there's a decision, a consultative approach, then there's a solution, and then there's just moving forward with that because you now see that that's the best thing to do.
Yeah. So I'm envisioning, an inbound sales team of, 50 people, maybe
Mhm.
very similar to a call center. And and I imagine, the persuasion part can be somewhat scientific with scripting. The
Yep.
authentication part is, more of an art. How would you keep a team of that, size continuing trying to be authentic? Because that's a very, you know, colorful sort of thing that,
Yeah.
people
Sure,
have
sure.
to, adjust to. So I mean, I would think that, they become robots, right? And they start to be, sound like they're not authentic in what they're saying.
And that generally happens to anybody who gets into a sales role or any role
Yeah.
where they've been doing it for a long time. They end up, they're saying the same things in the same way all the time. They get desensitized to the prospect and their life and their concerns, and what's going on with them because they've just heard it all, air quotes, they've
Yep.
heard it all before and they've seen it all before and they just either they don't care or they just know it doesn't matter because I'm just going to do my thing anyway. And so um, really the authentic piece is partially just the journey of understanding who you are, what your strengths, your talents, your abilities, your experiences, where you've been, how that fits into your conversations with sales and how that, is actually a tool to use. Like I said, I mean, and I've been saying this a lot to people recently, but like I'm a hot mess on paper and with my background, but that background makes it so that I can even have a conversation with someone like yourself or random sales calls or train somebody because like I've been there and I've had
Yeah.
enough experiences, and that's what actually is more authentic for me. And people appreciate that. When you're talking to someone who's in sales, you want to just know they're a human, they're another person, they're trying to help you, everyone's going through something, it's life. And then the authentic piece for salespeople is, what are you afraid of, what's keeping you from being successful, why, what that we all have a primal part of our brain that's still stuck in a cave or on the savannah thousands and thousands of years ago fighting for survival. And it's just afraid and wants to keep you safe. And then that's where I have a lot of people also get in touch with why they want to be successful. So what would they put on a vision board or build a vision board at their desk so they can see like what is it that they're striving for? Why do they want to be successful versus, just making calls and trying to close deals? Like, why do you actually want to do it? Because once you connect to that, then the rest of it's easier.
Yeah, that's you sort of went right into my next question because motivation is obviously, key too, right? I mean, it's how do I
Yep.
stay motivated, and then I think that's sort of a reflection of authenticity as well, right?
100%.
Um, and so I was going to ask you, so what are those, tips to sort of stay motivated? And you bring up sort of the why, and I remember. Early on in my career, we had a really great sales leader, that would lead 100 plus LOs. And one of his big things was, what's your why, right? And
Yeah.
we hear that all the
Gotcha.
time, with people, but really having whatever that is to be the driving force of what you're doing. But so you sort of use that same core belief, keep motivation.
100%, because the classic way it's done in sales organizations and teams is the carrot and or the stick, right? It's, if you close deals today, right, we need to hit our numbers, so I'll give you $100 or $500 or 1,000, whatever it is for
Yeah.
that industry, right? I'll give you $5, right? Sometimes that's the big bonus for the day. I'll give you $5 if you hit this, or I'll buy you lunch. Great. Okay, tomorrow comes. Okay, well, I'll give you $5 if you hit your numbers today. Well, you did that yesterday. So now what are you going to do for me? Because it's got to get bigger. And then it's got to be a TV. And then it's got to be a trip to the Caribbean. And then it's got to be a trip to the moon. Like, it just doesn't stop. It always has to be a bigger carrot. And also the stick, right? The stick has to get bigger. Do this or else, do this or else. Okay, now you're fired. And then you just run out of people to fire. And so
Yeah.
as a salesperson and in life, a lot of this, obviously we're talking about sales and lead generation and just the whole, that whole business, but a lot of it's just life in general, is what is intrinsically driving you to get out of bed and be successful, whether it's money or not. Like, for some people, it's clearly money and what that represents as a great scoreboard indicator. Some of it's what money's going to buy for. Is it security? Is it, ego? Is it, trips, vacations, how, whatever that might look like? The more you're in touch with that, and the bigger that is in your mind, and the more energy it has. Like, you look at people who are wildly successful, a lot of times they're coming from places where they had nothing as a kid. And so that energy in their mind of why they want to be successful is so that they never have to live that life, or their kids don't have to grow up like they did. That energy is so powerful. You just see those people just flying through brick walls. Like, nothing will stop them because it's so powerful.
Yeah.
And whether you've had that childhood or that life or those experiences or not, everyone has something that will motivate them enough to just push through barriers.
Do you think, what is that, personality test that people take for jobs,
There's
whatever?
Myers-Briggs, there's DISC
Myers-Briggs. Yeah, yeah,
test.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Do you think that there are people that are just innate salespeople, and those are the people that should be in it, and everybody else should be in operations or accounting, or, or is there something that, really, even that oceanographer can pull in and
Yeah.
become the salesperson,
So I think the first answer that comes to my mind, which, this is what I say a lot, especially on my podcast, but just in general, everything in life is sales.
Mhm.
Okay. So obviously there's the sales title, there's having a sales job, right? So being a mortgage loan officer,
Yeah.
um, I, and then there's everything is in sales, whether it's you're getting your significant other to want to see the movie you want to see, or the dinner you want to do, or it's, having your manager agree with your proposal, or having your team agree, or, having the owner, see your side of a conversation. Like, it's all sales and persuasion. And that's why I think the authentic persuasion piece is important, because when you're doing that, you can get way further in those conversations than when you're trying to sell, air quotes.
Yeah.
Um, so can anybody? I think anybody can be effective in sales. And again, so I'm a testament to that. As a shark tagging marine biologist, like, again, there's no reason I should be effective. But I wanted to be, and I saw where my strengths were, and I stuck in those. And then I also saw where my weaknesses were when it came to sales conversations, and avoid those. For example, I am by default nature a very analytical person. One of the things I used to screw up in the beginning constantly in my mortgage career, because I didn't know any better, is I thought people wanted to buy like I like to buy, which is lots of options, lots of information, making sure you don't screw up. And so I want to see everything. The worst thing for me would be making a mistake and buying the wrong thing and then feeling bad or looking stupid, those kind of things, right? So some personalities have that fear. Some personalities have the fear of missing out, and they don't care what they're doing, as long as they're not alone. And so what I used to do was I would, back in, early 2000s, there was a ton of mortgage options. And so I would put together a spreadsheet with like 10 different options. So a 30-year first and a fixed second, and an adjustable first with a fixed second, 80/20s, 80/15s, 80/10s. And I would have this, and I would hand it to him, and I'd be so excited. I'm like, here you go. This should make you feel good about what you're going to pick. I'm on your side. Like, if I was shady, I would just tell you what to do, but I don't care. And then nobody would buy, because I put them in analysis
Too many
paralysis, and
choices.
then
Yeah.
too many choices. It was terrible. I didn't realize it. Like I was doing it wrong from a persuasion standpoint. And so I think if you have those tendencies, you have to be really careful about what you do in your sales role, because what happens a lot, and this kind of goes into your question, which is most people default to treating other people like they want to be treated, which is good if it's the golden rule and it's respect and empathy and care. And I hold the door for you because that's respectful. Like, that kind of
Yeah.
feeling and interactions in the world is important. In sales, it is a killer of sales careers. It will be the death of your sales career if you treat everybody like you like to be treated as a customer.
Okay, so the next easy follow-up question is, how do you identify what that prospect, how they want to buy?
Usually you want to set up your questions so that you can ask them questions. And then it's really, this is the hardest part for a lot of people these days, it seems, is actually listening. So active listening to what they say and what they're in need of, and understanding personalities and behaviors. So whether it's Myers-Briggs or DISC or other things like that, I use one that's very similar to DISC, but with easier terms that make sense for me and what I train on. But you've almost, like, if you're going to be in sales and you're going to commit to that, and again, just life in general, you really want to be a student of psychology and behavior and personalities and other people, and reading different books. The Five Love Languages is an amazing book, especially if you want to be in sales, where it seems weird. That's a whole nother topic we could go on. But understanding 4 main personality types from a DISC test,
Yeah.
and then seeing how those come up in a conversation where we're talking about it and someone's asking questions about stats and numbers. Or is somebody asking questions about, well, who else is using this, and are they enjoying it? Is it working for them? That person wants the validation and the social proof, and their fear of missing out is their big thing. If you give that person spreadsheets, they will hang up on you, because that is their fate worse than death, is
Yeah.
spreadsheets and numbers, and they just want to have fun. And so
Yeah.
just make it fun. Whatever it is, you've got to make it fun. So
Yeah. Okay. So the process, we keep digging in. I keep thinking of the process of sales and going through, and I go, okay, now I've got that. The next challenge that salespeople have is the rejection, right?
yeah.
The
Yes.
negative things that come along with being in sales, and the no's and all this
Hmm.
sort of stuff.
Yeah.
That's tough, and that goes back to motivation and all this sort of stuff.
Yeah.
So, I mean, how does? And I'm sure there's no magical bullet to be able to handle rejection, but what's sort of your take on how maybe salespeople should look at it?
There's 3 things that I always focus on when that topic comes up or we're doing training. So I'm glad that you asked, because that one's huge, right? So that's a part of sales. It's a part of life.
Yep.
When you don't get your way and you don't get something you want or need, especially if you're in sales and that's your job and that's the pressure. Maybe there's 4 things. The first thing I would say is always keep it relative to what the number should be. For example, and this is the one I always use for people, if you want to be a Hall of Fame baseball player, right? Hall of Fame baseball players usually have about a 0.3, 0.4 batting average, which means they hit 1 out of every 3 pitches, not home runs. They just hit it. And that puts them in the Hall of Fame. That puts them at the top of their game, is when they're successful a third of the time. So when you're in sales, keep that in mind, right? It is a numbers
Yeah.
game. But the 3 points that I usually, focus on, one is we covered already, which is the why, right? What's on your vision board? Why do you want to keep moving forward? Why does the rejection not matter? And we hear all these stories all the time. And I always recommend people to check out those stories. Like Colonel Sanders, I forget how many different places he submitted his, special recipe to and got rejected. Thomas Edison with a light bulb, how many times that failed? People who write books and submit them to publishers and get turned down hundreds of times, and they make it anyway. So one is the why. What's on the vision board? Why do you want to do it? What's driving you? Second one is always remember that it's not, well, don't always remember, but most of the time, focus on the fact that it's not personal. If that person says no to you, what are they going through in their life? Are they having a bad day? Are they struggling? Is their boss mad at them? Did they just have a fight with their significant other? Maybe it's not a good fit. Like, what is it that's in on their side that you might not know? And we've all had that, right? Where you're standing in line at the grocery store, and I don't know if you've had this, but you're just like in line, the line is slow, it's terrible, it's painful, and you're just getting mad at the checkout person. You're like, this sucks. And then you get up to the front and it says trainee, and you realize they're new and they suck because they're new. And then all of a sudden you're empathetic and you go, oh man, I feel bad for being upset. You're new. Like, let me make this easier for you and be nice. And so always remember that like other people are going through things or they're at different stages of their life. And then the third part I always suggest is don't take it personal. And then also take it very personal, as in, what could you have done better? What do you need to work on? How can you improve? For example, in sports, athletes, what you see on the field, for example, like let's say with football, American football, what you see on the field is such a small percentage of their life. In football in the week, there's practice, there's training, there's strength training, there's mental training, there's coaching, there's leadership, and then there's lots of watching footage. So watching replays, watching what they do, watching what the opponent does. Not enough salespeople listen to their calls or listen to recordings of their interactions, and then with management help and coaching to see what could I. Yes, that person said no, but that's the fifth person that said no today. Maybe it's me. Like at
Yeah.
some point it's them, at some point it's you.
That is okay. So I know people probably, especially in a call center environment, will listen to calls, right? There's always somebody listening for quality
Mhm.
assurance and script adherence and all that sort of stuff. But, and it's usually sort of negative thing, right? It's the last thing you want to do is go into the manager's office and, review your calls, right? It's a
Yeah.
little
Yeah.
scary. But from a personal standpoint, I mean, that's a really great idea, especially taking it from that perspective of like an athlete looking at a game film,
Yeah.
really
100%.
taking a look at those calls, even negative and positive ones, and hearing maybe the tone of your voice that you don't hear when you're actually talking, or the words that you're actually saying, your responses. Really good idea. That's probably obvious, but from a little bit different twist or perspective.
Yeah, and I think because if you want to operate at a higher level, and again, keeping in mind the very first thing that I said was that you're not going to get them all right. Like
Yeah.
success will come, whatever your industry is, it's never going to be 100% close. If it's 100% close, you either have something that's just an order taker type thing, or you're manipulating the crap out of people to
Yeah.
get to 100%, and that's not good. So, for everyone else, if you're a professional, you want to get your numbers up and listen and be open to feedback and be willing to take feedback from others. Be willing. Everyone hates listening to their own calls. Trust me, I hate it. Like I'm that way too. I can't stand hearing my own recorded voice, but you just got to do it if you want to get better and you want to find those ways. And then what I would say to your point too, because yes, I mean, getting called into the manager's office to listen to calls or QA or whoever's doing it, it's always negative. There's always this feeling of like, oh man, what did I screw up? Okay, fine. Let me go through this. And my defense is up because our ego kicks in and our ego wants to protect ourselves. But what I would also say, and this is what I've done with reps for the longest time on the other side of that, is I will have every rep listen to every successful sales call that they do, because when you fail to close a deal and you listen to that call, we can all armchair quarterback and say, well, you could have done this, you should have done this, but there could be like 1,000 different little things that could have gone any different way to make it happen. And everyone's going to hear something different. Instead, what I always like to do is focus on the ones that worked, because then you listen to it and go, why did this work? What did you do here? And how do we do it again? Not you failed making a cake. Why did you fail making the cake?
Right.
You were successful at making the cake. So how do you do that again? How do
Yeah.
you do that again 100 times this week? Because that worked. And then you build a process and you get used to it and you have those tips where you go, oh, what worked is I asked questions and then I listened and then I was empathetic and I provided a solution. I did this and they brought up this question. And I brought up this answer and that worked really well. Great. Go back to your desk. Go do that again. That was amazing. High five, gold
Yep.
star. Keep it up.
Yeah, well, positive affirmation probably has a lot more weight than negative, right? Well,
You would think.
Okay. So actually, let me rephrase.
Hopefully,
Yeah, let me
theoretically.
rephrase that a little bit. Obviously, negative thinking and negative, is actually
Yeah.
really powerful, right? It's very
Yeah,
probably more powerful than
it is.
positive thinking. But listening to those good calls provides some muscle memory on the good things, not the bad things, is what I'm
100%.
trying to say.
Yeah.
So speaking of muscle memory, you've been typing a lot lately and doing a bunch of stuff. You're writing a book on this
Yes.
on all this stuff. So tell us a little bit about what you're working on. I mean, is it you're going through final drafts now, or where are you
Yes,
at?
final drafts and getting ready to go, print the first versions of it so we can see how it looks. The cover's been designed and ready to go, but it's called Selling with Authentic Persuasion, Transforming from Order Taker to Quota Breaker. And it's really this whole journey through those. And we've been talking about the authentic piece and the persuasion piece, which is super important. And a lot of these topics we've been covering are in there, but it's just encapsulating and helping somebody who, and again, my vision based on my experience, and fortunately or unfortunately, I've seen hundreds and hundreds of salespeople come and or go from sales careers in inside sales, is that I firmly believe there's so many people in sales roles. They ended up there accidentally, like I did. They're in that sales role, may not have enough training, may need more training, and they're trying to sell like we see in the movies that seem like a good way to go, but they're really bad ones. It's the selling ice to Eskimos that you brought up
Yeah,
earlier. And a lot of
yeah,
people think that's what sales is. And instead, I think it's more this authentic persuasion piece. And so my goal is to help salespeople really embrace that and then use it, and not just embrace it and be like, hey, I care about people, and so I don't want to sell them. It's I care about you, so it's my duty to sell you and move you forward, where either I'm solving a problem, I'm helping you get what you want, or like you were talking about earlier with selling something that might just be an upsell, is sometimes your duty, if you're selling something like a TV or a car, your duty is really to do the right thing for them, help them buy, because if you don't and they go down the street and talk to somebody else, that salesperson might not do the right thing and then talk them into something they don't need or overcharge them or do something else to them. And so really it's about embracing that. And then the third part of the book, it's actually 3 sections, I call the intangibles, which is outside of authentic persuasion, there's these other items I've seen that are the key for really good success in sales. Like dealing with buyer's remorse and generating referrals and all these other little intangibles where when you do them, then your sales career just takes off.
Hmm. What's the timeline? When do you think this is going to be available to the public?
It should be a couple of months from now. So hopefully,
Okay.
depending on how the speed is, my first time going through this process.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, hopefully in the next couple of months.
Has it been rewarding? Has it been challenging? Has it been regretful?
We'll go with door number 2, which is
Yeah.
challenging. What's interesting, and again, obviously I can't try to train people and talk about being authentic without my own authenticity. When I wrote the book about a year and a half ago, it was super easy. I had somebody who's mentoring me on the process. He gave me kind of the formula and structure, so I take what's in my brain and just put together chapters and write this book. I did it 2 hours a day in like 8 weeks. I wrote 60,000 words and just knocked it out. It was easy. Then I printed it and I read it and I was like, this is garbage. And then I threw it away and didn't want to do it again. And then I waited about 9 months and then I'm like, okay, now I know what I want to do. And I rewrote it almost all from scratch, copying and pasting some of it, and then printed it again and was like, I still don't like this. This is crap. And what it was I had all these concepts and all these strategies, but nothing tying it together. And it literally wasn't until a few months ago where authentic persuasion came to me as the underlying theme of everything I've done and everything I've coached people to do to be successful in sales. And then once that clicked, the book just like I finished the parts of the book, put it together, and now it's just been lights out. So it's been this roller coaster of, doing it, but then waiting and then doing it and, trusting the process.
Yeah, no, that's great. And you obviously provide consulting services as well. That's your that's your main focus today, right?
Yep.
And so where can where can find you? Is it just Cutter Consulting Group or what?
CutterConsultingGroup.com is for the consulting side. Yeah.
Okay, cool. One question that when you were sort of talking just a few minutes ago about the selling ice to Eskimos and the sales part, one of the other sort of cliche things that come up is always be closing, right? The ABCs of
Yes.
sales or whatever.
Yes.
And is that still a
So
yeah,
I've been using this hashtag on LinkedIn for a while now because I've thought about that. I mean, that always comes up, right? Like depending on what guru you listen to or
yeah,
what movie or who's debating what.
yeah.
Instead, what I focus on, and I think this is what makes me successful in sales and in coaching and all of that, just in general, is the ABCs to me is always be curious. When you're always curious, I'm going to ask questions. I'm going to listen, not just curious because I'm asking questions to check off boxes, which a lot of salespeople do because they're like, here's the script. I got to ask these questions, blah, blah,
Yep.
blah. Now let me move on. Is I'm always be curious, genuinely curious. Like, I want to know about you. I want to know about what makes you tick. I don't want to, and then I want to see where's the opportunity to either sell you what I have, if it's a good fit, or who can I connect you with? How can I be of value? I mean, a lot of salespeople think, I just got to sell you or else. It's like, if I can't sell you or if I don't have a good product for you, what else can I do? Like your early example about, marketers CMOs trying to sell to this brand and trying to get in with that person. If they're not buying from you or it's not a good fit or you're not there yet, like what other value can you provide? The only way you get there is by being curious and asking questions and looking for opportunity. And then once you change your mindset to that, then you'll see the opportunities and then you'll just fill in those opportunities.
Yeah. We could probably keep talking for a long time because the next thing is like, I'm talking about sales and marketing and all that sort of stuff, because really there's got to be some cohesive communication going
Oh,
forward.
yeah,
I
that's
know
a
it's
whole nother
yeah,
show
I
topic,
know.
man.
Well,
Oh, because
that's going to lead into my thing though here is you
okay,
have a podcast, right? So
yes.
you have a podcast that you're more than likely talked about a lot of this stuff. What's the name? Where can somebody find it so they can not necessarily listen to us talk about, listen to you talk about it with other people.
Well, first off, I think that we should talk about it. Maybe it's another show, or maybe it's
Yeah.
offline, or we can do some videos for that. But because I always think that is a detriment in most companies where it's sales versus marketing, and B, like they're part of the same, and they should be on the same page. And if they're not, that's usually a problem from the top down. In my opinion, that's the punchline. My show is called the Sales Experience Podcast, and I just finished season 2. So I actually do this weird thing where I take a break, kind of like a TV show does.
Oh, that's
And then
cool.
I come back and
Yeah.
reassess and kind of refocus. So you can find it everywhere: iTunes, Stitcher, SoundCloud, Spotify. It's on my cutterconsultinggroup.com site. There's a podcast button. You can see all of them on there with all the transcripts, all of the links for everybody. I have about 220 episodes. Season 1 has a lot. Like if you're in sales or in sales management, season 1 was basically me with a theme every week of talking about a specific topic. Like one of them was
Yeah.
marketing, and just, 5 episodes of that.
That's great. One thing I do want to talk about, excuse me, before we leave, and would you sort of agree that, when we talk about, sales and marketing and empathy and the process and persuasion, it starts to come to a realization for me that it's a culture. It's a company culture thing, right?
Yep.
It's not a sales management script or this. It really has to become more of a culture thing
100%.
for the company
Yep.
than just something else.
Yeah. And I can pretty much always. There's some outliers with some salespeople who don't have the right kind of intentions,
Sure.
but looking at a few people or looking at the overall basis of a company from the outside, you can tell the culture and the core values from the top down based on how the salespeople sell, how the marketing feels and looks. Like it's all
Yeah.
in alignment. You can't run from that.
Yeah, and if you don't have that, then you don't have the sales and marketing on the same page, and you don't have
Yep.
operations and IT and all these sorts of things working with the same language and the same empathy or whatever it may
It's always
be.
from the top.
Yeah, it's always from the top. So I
Yep.
guess we'll leave it at that. I appreciate you coming on, and I'd love to do it again. I mean, let's make sure we keep in touch. For those that want to reach out, I'll make sure to put your contact or your website up here. But is there if they want to shoot you an email, how would they do that?
Jason at cutterconsultinggroup.com, or if they're on LinkedIn, I'm on LinkedIn all the time.
Yep.
Connect with me on there, send me a message. I've embraced the fact that I am a sales nerd and I love talking about sales. Like we could just keep talking all day, like literally you and I. So anyone who wants to talk about sales, they want help with sales for themselves or their team. I mean, it's just fun for me. I enjoy it. So
Good
that'd be great.
stuff. Well, like they say, find something you love and you'll
Yeah,
be great at it, right?
there you go.
Well, good stuff, Jason. I appreciate it, and I hope you have a good rest of the week. And I look forward to looking out for the book and everything else you've got going on. So, thank you.
For sure, Michael. And I appreciate you having me on here. And, I love what you're doing for the lead generation side, which is, that's a big one too, that, with the authentic piece and doing things the right way. So I appreciate you.
Absolutely. Thanks, Jason.